everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Lysha from LyshaBCreative, and today's tutorial is actually going to be a remake of a design I made about a year and a half ago as it stands now. And so I actually got this tumbler back as a customer that purchased this, dropped it, and I thought it was going to be a quick fix because it looked like a pretty minor surface crack. Turned out that this was a complete chip of the epoxy, and so I need to redo the entire tumbler. So I thought, what better way than to show you guys a full tutorial of how I did this original design. And of course, now that I am almost 2 years into tumbler making, of course we're going to upgrade this quite a bit. So hopefully you'll follow me along for the journey. Definitely make sure to check out the description box where all the supplies that I use for today's tutorial will be listed and linked. And of course, my social media handles will also be there as well. Before you go, definitely make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And make sure that you hit that notification bell so you're notified when I post my next tutorials. So let's go ahead and jump right into today's tutorial.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So this is the cup that I took back from my customer, thinking that this would be just a very quick and easy fix with a minor surface crack. So I sanded along the rim where the surface crack was, attempting to get down far enough to kind of cover up that crack. Well, in doing so, I really realized that the crack had actually damaged the seal at the rim of the cup, and it was actually cracked all the way down to the stainless steel. So we're gonna have to strip this cup in order to get this remade. So this is my stripping process. So I have just taken paper towels and I have wrapped them completely around the cup, and now I'm gonna take my acetone and I am going to literally cover this entire tumbler wrapped in paper towel with acetone. So you can also bucket strip. That's something that sometimes I'll do with large batches, but because I was working on this one particular cup, I wanted to do a single stripping process for this one item. So I'm then going to wrap that burrito style in a piece of foil and then wrap it one more time with another piece of foil just to make sure that I don't get any seepage of the acetone. I'm then going to throw this into a bucket and keep it sealed, and then we're going to take a look at it in the next 24 hours. So now that my cup has been sitting in the acetone for 24 hours, I'm going to see kind of what has happened so far as the acetone removing all of the design elements and the epoxy from the cup. So because this is a cup that was made a year and a half ago, I did know that this process was probably going to take a couple strip opportunities in order for me to get the cup completely stripped and back to its stainless steel base. So as you can see, a lot of the epoxy is able to be pulled off here, but it's not completely stripped. I still have a lot of glitter, a lot of epoxy still left. So I'm going to do the exact same process after I pull off any of the loose bits of epoxy from this first attempt at stripping. So sometimes with your older cups, when you're looking to strip them, it takes a couple times for you to be able to really get all of the first layers of epoxy off. So that is something that is completely normal when you are stripping and using acetone. There also are plenty of other ways that you can strip your cups, and so this is just my preferred way because it's something that I can completely control, but I also know that people use citrus strip and other methods in order to be able to strip their cups if they need to restart over with the base. So after I've removed all of these extra bits of epoxy, I'm going to remove that paper towel, and then I'm going to rewrap this cup another burrito style and let it sit for another 24 hours. Now that another 24 hours has passed, I now am going to be able to remove the last bits of the epoxy here and the design from the cup. So finally I have a pretty cleaned stainless steel base here to be able to work with just needing to clean up this a little bit with some acetone. And then as soon as I have this nice and clean, the best that I can, I'm going to take my cup and I'm going to spray paint it with these 3 colors. All right, so now that my cup has been spray painted in a swirl, I did apply a thin layer of epoxy to my cup so that we can do Epoxy Method Glitter application. So I am starting with St. Lucia, which is a square cut glitter from Peachy Olive Glitters. It is a beautiful, beautiful, like deep turquoise color that I absolutely love. I definitely don't use it enough. And we are just going to kind of follow the swirl pattern of the paint and cover up most of that section that is blue. Now I'm going to go in with Chunky Parabatai, another glitter from Peachy Olive Glitter. And this has a lot of different size pieces in it, which I love. A lot of like very white pieces. Other pieces are translucent. It's a beautiful mix of white glitter. So I'm going to cover up a little bit of my white sections there. Again, just kind of getting a base down for all of our colors. The last color we're going to go in with is Kadabi. Kadabi is a beautiful like magenta color, which I love, and we're again just kind of creating a little bit of a base in each of our color sections so we can go in with finer glitters to really help meld everything together. So once I am done going in with Kadabi, we are going to now go in with, this is Shattered Crystals. So Shattered Crystals is a absolutely fluffy, like the fluffiest glitter I think I've ever encountered. And it's from LyshaBCreative, and I just love how like beautiful and like literally like shattered crystals that it looks like. It's a really beautiful just white glitter that is perfect for anything that you need when it comes to white glitter, and I love adding it as an addition to most of my white mixes. We are now going to go in with Turks, and this is from Peachy Olive Glitters. This is a finer cut of St. Lucia, and we are just going to kind of start to blend in between our two white sections where that turquoise section is. So as you guys know, I like to start with my my largest cut glitters first, and then go in with my finer cuts to really help me with the blending process. Also, be sure you don't forget your butt. You never want to forget to get glitter on the bottom of your cup. So now we're going in with this color called Raspberry Delight. Raspberry Delight is from, I believe that Raspberry Delight is from, I want to say Glitter Makes It. Glitter Makes It glitter, I believe. And so we are just going to cover up that Kadabi section and a section of the bottom. Finally, for my white section, we are going to go in with Jewel, and Jewel is from Glitter by Mama Boss. So we are going to kind of douse all of those white areas all around, and this is really just going to help me blend all of the colors together for my swirl. So once I'm done with the glittering process, I'm going to roll this cup in a piece of parchment paper here, and this is going to help keep my glitter super flat so that when I do go to epoxy my cup, I won't require as many layers of epoxy in order to get it completely smooth. So it's nice and flat, and now we can stick it on the turner for 2 coats of epoxy until my glitter is smooth. So at this point, I have gotten a good 2 layers of epoxy onto my cup, and so now we're going to add sort of the Milky Way pieces of this tumbler. So I am adding a bit of epoxy to my cup here, a very thin layer here, as I've done in a few other tutorials where I've done a Milky Way style tumbler. I like to do this all on the turner. It just is the easiest for me, but I'm going to put about probably 10, maybe 15 mLs of mixed epoxy into or onto this cup. And this is just going to create a little bit of a base here in order to be able to add the white epoxy dye to our cup here. So we're going for like a full Milky Way look here to be able to start to get the design to be recreated. So once I have put epoxy on this cup, I'm just going to torch it very quickly to make sure that I don't have any bubbles, and then we're going to mix a few elements together into some extra epoxy that I have in a medicine cup below to be able to add the Milky Way elements to this cup. So I'm going to mix a little bit or separate the little bit of epoxy that I have left. Again, I don't need a whole lot. We're going to be using both Diamond Magic from my Aisha Creations, and we are also going to be using white epoxy dye from Alumilite. Just a drop of that goes way long, goes a very far way, so definitely only a drop of that, and we're going to mix both of these up. So I wanted a little bit of the Diamond Magic just to break up some of the white epoxy dye that sometimes can kind of take over the entirety of the cup, and so I don't have a lot of epoxy in either cup, and that is for good reason. I am going to do this process twice. The first process is going to just be with the white epoxy dye and the My Aisha Creations Diamond Magic, and then the second time I'm going to go in with probably just glitters and just a very little bit of white epoxy dye. And that's just to create a little bit more dimension in the cup, give it some extra sparkle, and really make it look beautiful. And so I am just taking my stirring stick here, and I am just putting lines of the white epoxy dye throughout the cup here. And I'm going to take my heat gun, and I am just going to try and get these lines to spread throughout the cup. So in some of those larger areas, I'm trying to get that epoxy to kind of flatten and widen and spread out along the cup. And if any sections you don't like, you literally can just take your fingers and just kind of swoop your fingers through those areas and remove any of the pieces that you don't really care for. So I like to go through the entire cup on all of the lines that I've created with my gloved hand, just to kind of give them a little bit more of spreading out of the sections, because I do want a nice white Milky Way sort of base before I go in on top with some of the white glitter so that they stand out better. So I just continue to play around with this using my heat gun in order to push around my white lines of epoxy dye there and really get it to a stage that I like. Once I've done that, I will take my Diamond Magic and I'm just going to place that a little bit on top of the white areas. Again, just to add a little bit of sparkle to that white epoxy dye. You certainly could mix your Diamond Magic in with your white epoxy dye. I just didn't find that you could see it as well when it was mixed together versus if I added it very close to that line and not directly on top. So I'm going to just continue to go through these areas with my gloved hand and really playing around with this until I feel that I am satisfied, which I will then let it sit on the turner until it is fully cured so that we can go in and do this process again, but with glitter. Okay, so on the second take, this is what we have to start with so far. So I've let this epoxy fully cured, and now we're going to go in again with the same exact process, except we're going to be using a heavily focused Milky Way with just glitter and not so much the epoxy dye. So I'm going to take my pot of epoxy here that I mixed about 30 mLs of epoxy and pour a little bit into each of my 2 medicine cups. I then am going to use an empty medicine cup and pour just Filori in there, which is from Peachy Olive Glitters. I'm going to take one of my small batches of epoxy and pour Girlfriend in, and this is from Lysha Creations. It's got beautiful hearts in it. And then my final cup is going to have Snow Angel in the cup. So I'm going to mix those glitters in with the epoxy. Filori is the only one that does not have epoxy in the cup because we're just going to add that on top. So I'm going to take the little bit of epoxy that I have left and I am going to put a thin layer of epoxy on the cup once again. Again, this is going to help all of my glitters and epoxy move throughout the cup, and that way I'm not putting it on a dry surface. I'm creating a nice even level in this next coat that we're doing. So once I have gotten my epoxy nice and thin and smoothed all over the cup, I will take a torch and just make sure to pop any bubbles, making sure I don't have any micro bubbles within my first layer of epoxy here. And then we're going to go in with our glittered epoxied batches. So I've mixed up Girlfriend there. This one is Snow Angel. And then we're going to literally apply this to the cup just like we would the Milky Way that we started with just the white epoxy dye. So because this is white glitter, I do have to keep in mind that it is going to be a little bit more translucent. What I do love that this glitter Milky Way portion adds to the cup that the Milky Way with just the white epoxy dye doesn't, is it gives it so much more extra sparkle, which is what I was going for. So in recreating this cup, I knew that I wanted to keep the design close to exactly the same, so use similar colors like I did the first time around, but I knew that I wanted to make it sparkle even more than it did the first time. And so now I'm going in with Girlfriend. So as you'll see, literally what I did, it looks like a crazy hot mess. I promise it'll make sense in the end, but I'm just going in different sections with those 2 glittered epoxy mixes and just kind of creating lines just like we did with the white epoxy dye in the first round of this Milky Way process. So I knew that I wanted to recreate this cup and make it sparkle more than it did the first time. This was originally part of a his and hers design for a wedding. And so when I recreated this, I wanted to stay as true to the original design as I could, but of course still creating some additional elements that would make it even more beautiful than it was the first time around. So now that I have my glitter mixes onto my cup, I'm going to take my gloved hand and I'm really just going to spread out those sections and try and make them as flat as possible, especially in the sections where Girlfriend is. Girlfriend has a bunch of white hearts, like white small hearts, as part of the glitter mix, which I think is beautiful and just adds that extra element to the cup that I think is great for a his and her style cup. So again, just going through and blending some of those areas together, flattening them out slightly, making sure that I have kind of a nice even mix here. So off camera, which you didn't see, I added just a small bit of white epoxy dye to a small batch of epoxy, and I'm just going in with some of those white sections and really kind of brightening them up and adding the white epoxy to that area. So I'm going to take my heat gun. I was hoping that this was going to help me spread this a little bit, and it did for the white epoxy dye, but not so much for the glitter sections, which is fine. But I did take my heat gun to those sections just to get them to spread out a little bit, and then went back through with my gloved hand just to get any of the glitter that may have been sticking up to spread out and really make sure that you could see the sparkle in each section of this cup. So once I was done playing around with this, you literally can just play around with it until you feel that you are satisfied. And then of course I am going to torch it once again, make sure I don't have any bubbles, and then I will let this sit until it is officially cured. So as soon as this was done, it obviously has a little bit of kind of a bumpy feel, and so I wanted to make sure that I go in with another coat of epoxy before I pull it off the turner. I did also add, which I totally forgot to include, I did add Filori to the white section. So Filori is a chunky white that I use from Peachy Olive Glitters, and I just went over the white sections with this epoxy, or with this glitter. And this was just to create kind of more sparkle, more shine, and really just give more dimension to the cup. So after I did all of that, I did torch it and then leave it to sit to fully cure before I applied another coat of epoxy over top. So I'm not going to show you the process of doing the decals because they are copyrighted images that I did forever ago. So I'm not going to show you that process, but you guys have seen me do decals before, so definitely make sure you head over to another video. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this cup looks like after all the sparkle and shine. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, before you go, make sure you give this video a huge thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again next week. Bye!